Hello, my friends, and welcome to Happy Brain, Happy Life. My name is Dr. Mireli Saponte, Dr. Mini, for those of you who already follow me. And you know that here at Happy Brain, Happy Life, our goal is to help you, give you some neuroscience information in a practical, simple way so that you can apply it to your life and improve the way you think, feel, and act better by improving your performance, by improving your success, by improving your quality of life. And so today I have a show for you that is, I called it the dopamine code, right? And it's our ability to unlock motivation and our peak performance. And now, as entrepreneurs, as sports athletes, as people in life who want to succeed, peak performance and motivation are key instruments for us to move forward. And as life goes along, we have some days that we feel good, some days that we don't feel that great, right? And we still have to push through to be able to be successful. Now, dopamine is what we call the feel good neurotransmitter, right? So but it's actually the brain's motivation molecule. And what we mean by that is that it's the driving, it kind of drives our pursuit for rewards, for goal achievement, for peak performance. And so when we understand that we can regulate and optimize our dopamine, then we can help stay focused and feel focused, energized, organized, resilient without falling into that burnout and addictive lifestyle cycles. And so I want you to think of dopamine as your reward system and how we can really adjust in a matter of seconds, really, how we feel about ourselves, how we're thinking about something, and then move forward in rewarding ourselves and saying, okay, I can do this, right? I'm able to achieve it. I can feel good about what's going on, even if it's a difficult moment or a difficult time. And so dopamine, as a neurotransmitter, is going to be that primarily reward circuit. And so it's released in different areas of our brain, but primarily it is produced by the ventral tegmental area, VTA. We call it VTA, right? And that's where it originally, produces dopamine. It's under the cortex, right? So it's what we call subcortex. So it's more towards the inner part of the brain. And then there's also an area of the brain called the nucleus accumbens, and that's where the processes of motivation and reward anticipation, like when we are able to be really close to achieve something, what moves us to continue to get excited about something and work towards, that's where it kind of comes into action. That's where dopamine kind of does its work, right? That's where we want to see the most amount of dopamine activating our system. And it also activates our prefrontal cortex. I talk about this all the time because this is the part of our brain that actually regulates what executive functioning. So what does that mean? Is decision making, is planning, is organization, is goal setting. So that's exactly what we want, for those areas to be excited enough, now not overly excited, but excited enough so that we're able to stay focused, to stay goal oriented, and continue to do what we need to do to achieve our goals, no matter what the circumstances may be around us. Hope that makes sense. So I'm going to share with you some facts and some data about dopamine that I want you to kind of pay attention to, because, for example, dopamine and motivation, there was a study in the University of Connecticut, I think 2018 if I'm not mistaken, and found that low dopamine levels led to reduced motivation. And so what happens is there was increased preference of easier tasks. Higher dopamine levels actually drove the persistent on overcoming the challenges. So understand that this neurochemical, sometimes we say, well, I'm not motivated. Well, then all of a sudden you go to this amazing event, right? Where everything is like music, and I do it, let me tell you, because it does drive your dopamine levels up, right? The problem with with being in a place that's going to drive up your dopamine. And it's not that it's a problem, but the consistency is understanding why we are doing that at that moment is driving our dopamine levels up so that we can be focused and engaged and all energized in the moment, and everybody feels it. You can feel it. You can feel the energy. And then in a room filled with people that have high dopamine, you can imagine everybody gets all rowdy and excited. What happens after that is that you go home and there's nobody being rowdy with you, right? And so then how do you increase your dopamine levels when you're at home? So that is why understanding that it's not about the event, it's about increasing the dopamine levels, that you can still do it at home. So what happens with many of these events is that yes, they go, they help you, increase the dopamine levels, but then you go home and have no clue how to do that at home, how to lift your motivation at home. You have no clue how to keep that up. And that is because you need to stay in a coaching team. You need to stay with people that understand the brain and help you, push you, every day, and give you the accountability to continue to build that dopamine in your system until there is a point where you can actually learn it and practice it and do it on your own. So I remember in the past, it would take me, I would attend, I mean, I've been attending amazing events for many, many years. That is why I do some of them, also because I love them. But also, I was having the same kind of experience. And I realized this. I realized, yes, I'm building my dopamine up there, but I'm not doing it when I'm not in the event. And so I started teaching people how to just pick themselves up. So now I might be in a very, very low moment because we are all human. I can be in low moment and I can understand I need to do something for myself to pick myself up from this, and I'll immediately put some activities into action to build up my dopamine. And one of my favorites is putting fun Latino music and started dancing or started doing something fun and making myself happy about something typically very disconnected to what is causing me that dismotivation or that lack of motivation, and I'll just pick myself right back up and get back on it. So dopamine is also extremely important in the process of learning. This is why all of these events that you might have been attending, and then you feel that, people, there's a lot of color, there's a lot of music, there's a lot of, good vibes and energy, but it's because increasing dopamine levels while you are learning something, there are studies that say, that shows that it helps encode the positive reinforcements for creating new habits, for creating new learning. And so it kind of helps our memory kind of keep it in place. So emotions and actually our senses are one of the things that I use constantly in my events. I even add smells during my event, okay? And an opportunity for color, for textures, for touching, for hearing, for seeing, so that you make it, a habit of engaging enough so that the experience allows that learning to stick with you. Okay, so this is very important in the educational system, in the education level. We should use it at all levels. So we use it a lot in the earlier, pre-Ks through elementary, but then it starts fading away. I remember that by first grade, my daughters are now homeschooled, but in the first years of my oldest daughter, they were in regular public school. And unfortunately, what they experienced and what they lived in that setting was not an engaging, dopamine high, motivational um, experience, because everything was about not singing, not moving, sit down, quiet down, if not saying shut up, and sip and lock and put it in your pocket was the best kind of phrase that my daughter had in first grade, which obviously led me to understand they have no clue about the rain, and I took them out of that system. So understand that dopamine is necessary. This is why kids, while moving and running and being outside, learn better and remember better than being sitting in a classroom for hours in a day. And it is a brain function. Okay, it is not something abstract outside of us that is like up in the air, like I say all the time. It is real. And so we are able to kick in the dopamine levels in an appropriate way so that it helps in the learning. And this applies to all ages, okay, throughout our lifespan. And so also there are studies, we got to watch out because dopamine and overstimulation can also lead to, a downregulation of the system. So excessive dopamine spikes, right, from, for example, social media, junk food, drugs, can lead to that dopamine downregulation, which means that it's just going to pick up and down, right? And it's not going to create that consistency and appropriate levels for learning, for being successful. So reducing long-term motivation and pleasure is one of the things, and that sensitivity to success or to pleasure, it's one of the things that we need to watch out, because if we overstimulate it, being, excessively, especially with drugs, social media is one of them, because the consistency of the speediness of things that happen in front of our eyes just make our brain be kind of bored, right? Excessively bored when in downtime. And so we need to regulate that and decide how we're really spiking our dopamine in our system. This is why we really need to reduce how much, cell phone, especially, the scrolling in the phones, how to reduce that so that we are not impacting our dopamine levels in a negative way. I hope that that makes sense to you guys. So to use dopamine strategically, okay, for success, for sustained success, we must really regulate it like a thermostat, right? We need to teach our body, avoiding the overstimulation and maximizing the natural productive releases. So how do we do that, right? That's why we're here, because I want to make it really productive for you guys. I have a couple of options that you can apply, and I'm gonna tell you some of my favorites, right? But for me, here are like three or four of my favorites. Okay, so number one is cold exposure. This is why people are doing now the cold plunge. Now, I don't do personally cold plunge, but I do this one, okay, that I'm going to tell you about. You don't necessarily need to go and buy one of the cold plunges. You can still do it and get the effects with this, okay? So there's plenty of studies that say that a 60-second cold shower, this does not mean that you're going to shower in 60 seconds, but what it means is I typically do it at the end of my shower. So I like warm showers. It relaxes my muscles, it kind of relaxes me. I really feel a lot of, stress release in a warm kind of hot shower. However, the last 60 seconds need to be in the coldest temperature that the water can come out, okay? And it's like a little shot of cold. And what it does, it creates a shock to the body, to the brain, right? It creates a shock to the brain. And that little shock is what causes the dopamine, natural, productive dopamine release. And so what it does is activates your brain for a second. And we go, "Ooh," right? And it's like, ah. But it really provokes, it increases the dopamine levels in about 250%. There was a study in 2022 that showed this, and it makes it last for several hours. So it actually improves your motivation and your levels of energy, and it keeps you up and focused and alert for hours to come right after those 60-second showers. So you can apply it at home. There are people that are also doing it with a big bowl of ice, and they'll do it only by inserting their face, a couple of seconds at a time, depending on how much you can hold your breath. I don't do this one. I have tried it because I've been curious about using it and how my body reacts to it. I really like the cold shower, and especially after a hot shower, because right after the hot shower, the cold water is going to feel really, really cold. And so it does the effect of those 60-second cold shower. Now, number two, really important, and everybody that's a client of mine right now knows that every single session I touch base on this and where we're at, is aerobic activity, because it boosts dopamine 30 to 50%, and it actually enhances the receptors sensitivity. Okay, so exercise, and I'm not saying about doing a whole hour of exercise. It can be a 15-minute boosted, circuit, high interval training kind of session. So even if you are somebody that's very busy and don't have a lot of time, you can do this. Now, I also like in the exercise piece, I'm going to add one that I use often, and I do have one at home, and it's one of the small bouncers, round bouncers that you can have at home. You can have them with a, with a handle to hold on to, or without a handle. But 3 minutes in a bouncer makes a whole lot of difference. I cannot tell you because I haven't done a study about it, and I haven't read one about it in terms of the amount of time, but I do use it in a 3 minute interval. Very simple, just bouncy session. You don't have to, it's easier on your joints because you don't have to jump. You just need to bounce. Okay. So it doesn't have to be a high intensity, jumping on your joints or anything like that. You can just bounce lightly. It boosts your immune system. Actually, the first times that you use it, probably you even get a like slight cold system because it's just boosting and flushing out your immune system. It really does that work for you, but it does boost your dopamine in the morning. My girls even use it um, a lot of times, and especially my little one will tell me, okay, I've done my 3 minutes, mom. And she'll love to go and jump on that. Obviously, she uses a trampoline outside as well. Now, dietary things that can be precursors of dopamine are going to be a couple of these. Okay, so number one is tyrosine rich foods, so things like avocados, eggs, almonds, right? A certain amount of nuts for sure have high levels of tyrosine, and this really fuels the synthesis of dopamine. So we can help ourselves with that, right? Now, number two is going to be probiotics. Now, if we have lactobacillus and bifidobacterium, those two support the gut in the dopamine production. And so, two areas that we can support our dopamine levels as you stay healthy and you're keeping a healthy lifestyle. Avocados and eggs are some of my favorite things. I love to have eggs and avocado breakfast. So, so yes, dopamine it helps your body. Obviously, the nutritional piece, the more we stay away from junk foods, from high sugar contents, that is also going to support your nutritional success for dopamine levels. Now, the timing strategy, right? So a dopamine reward timing strategy, we call it DRTS, DRTS, and it's not about the rewards, but it's really about the anticipation of the reward. Is the process of is one of the things that this is why delayed gratification, breaking goals into smaller wins increases motivation. If you just get everything in one, then your body says, well, I can always get everything in one. So it's not going to happen. This is why when you're creating, I was just on a workshop creating dream boards with people. I tell them, break down that goal, break down that dream, break it down into pieces that you can feel, that you can touch, that you can experience, that you can feel accomplished. Because once you feel like you can accomplish this step, then your body and your reward system starts understanding it felt really good to achieve this step. How about I go to the next step, right? And so it just releases the amount of dopamine needed to move to the next step. This is why direct sales are so successful around the world, because they start with small, yet your body, your brain, everything feels that level of success, and they celebrate all the small wins throughout until you get to the higher levels and very successful, achievable things. And so delaying the gratification is very, very useful. If you do use dream boards, which I totally use. I we create one and then adjust it throughout the year. Also, let me know if you want to learn about that, because I actually did a lesson on that, but I have a deep course on dream board building in a way that is neuroscientifically successful, right, to you. And so this is one of those things that we incorporate into that. And then a hack for this is going to be set a 48-hour delay before rewarding yourself after major milestones. Think about that. You have a major milestone and wait you wait 48 hours to achieve that particular, to receive that particular reward. And it's going to be like the anticipation. Oh my goodness, it's one day, it's 2 days. Even if you've set a goal of going, I remember we had set a cruise for the family like a year out. My goodness, we couldn't wait for the cruise. And the girls were like, Mom, it's 2 months away. Mom, it's only 7 weeks away. Mom, is everybody is like excited. Everything that you're thinking is towards that. The the packing was such an excitement. My little one packed like almost a month ahead of it, because that reward system was like in the anticipation. So even when you know you have accomplished something at the end of the month, give yourself those 48 hours to get that compensation. And you'll see the difference in how your body, how your brain reacts to just achieving that. Even now in social media, it's like 2 days, one day to achieve this. Everybody's gonna, you can feel it, you can see it, how it creates that anticipation in the body, and the brain gets really more motivated. And so as you accomplish that, the next time you're going to do it, is going to know, it's going to learn that pattern so that you're able to repeat that emotion. Okay. Now, dopamine fasting. Let's see. Let's reset. Kind of resets your sensitivity, because sometimes we have constant digital stimulation from social media notifications. We have, constant junk food. And so it hijacks our dopamine. Yeah. It kind of reduces its effectiveness. So, one simple solution, and you've seen a lot of people doing the fasting process now. Anything that I say here, and I should have said my disclaimer at the beginning, is not to substitute anything that you and your medical doctor have agreed upon, but these are some recommendations that certainly work for the body. So consult your physician before attempting anything that has to do with, your nutrition or your body, or any techniques in particular that we might be sharing. Okay. So those things reduce our effectiveness of dopamine in our body. So one of the solutions, right, is have an hour or 2 hours in the day where there is no dopamine stimulation. So, for example, 1 or 2 hours in the day where there's no phone, no sugar, no scrolling. Does that make sense? I hope it does, because it really gives the body a break and it says, oh, okay, I can relax. There's no dopamine being released. So when you start activity again, it comes, it knows what your body kind of produces it in a more natural, effective way. I hope that that makes sense. But for example, that's one of the ways. That's a simple one, 1 to 2 hours. So people can start with that. If you don't feel like going to one full day per month without artificial dopamine spikes. So, for example, one full day a month without digital stimulation, so literally digital detox, and minimal stimulation. A day for rest, a day for quiet, a day for not so much activity. Can you do that once a month? Yeah. And what happens is that the base in dopamine levels, you know, increases up to 60% within a few weeks. But if you are able to apply these simple techniques, you know, dopamine rest for 1 or 2 hours a day, and then a dopamine retreat, can we call it that? to help our dopamine start being produced in our natural ways. Now, dopamine anchoring for productivity can be done in different ways. And I promise we're almost at the end of this, but there's two more that I want to share. Dopamine anchoring for productivity is going to be, you know, use randomized rewards, intermittent reinforcement, to maintain that engagement. What that means is that you're always rewarding on the same time, at the same pace, or on the same time of the month. Then it gets kind of not so much dopamine producing anymore because the body already knows that that's going to happen. So when you do intermittent randomized rewards, it re-engages the dopamine system and kind of helps it produce new spikes and new excitement. Okay, so we call it also the apply the 90-30 rule. Okay, and this one is 90 minutes of deep work with 30 minutes of active recovery. What that does is that the brain rewires the dopamine during the break. And this, for example, this particular strategy I share with one of my clients who's going to medical school, and her goal this last semester of her bachelor's, where she's working towards getting into medical school. I tell her the last thing you want is to work, 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 study, study, study for many, many hours because the dopamine levels decrease. So if you work for 90 minutes intense, which is fine, probably as an adult you can sustain it, then you got to give yourselves a really nice active recovery. And what active recovery it means is not slouching back on the couch watching TV for 30 minutes. It means go for a brisk walk, do something that is fun, play a sport, do something that'll reactivate the body, and it actually consolidates the memory of whatever you were working for in 90 minutes. People don't understand the value of this, and so it's very traditional for people to say, no, I was locked up for 7 to 8 hours studying for a test. That is the most absolute, absurd technique that you can use for your brain. And I say it bluntly. I can take those 8 hours and break them into 90-minute pieces with 30-minute breaks, and that will make so much more sense to your brain, to your body, to your success in whichever test you were going to take. And last but not least, in this one is going to be gamify tasks. So turn it into a challenge with streaks and small wins and unpredictability. For example, um, one of the things that I do with picking up a mess in the house is I put a timer and I go, let's see who can do this faster. And everybody runs. Like, I'll do a minute, I'll do 3 minutes. You've got 3 minutes, and everybody starts doing a task and running for it. And obviously, it spikes the excitement, it spikes the challenge, and everybody gets a boost of dopamine, but we get things done. That's a little trick for moms and dads out there. Okay, and grandpas and grandmas as well. um, so gamify whatever task you're doing. It really going to release the dopamine in a natural, productive way, and it's going to get everybody engaged. But in addition, it's really going to have a lasting effect on the rest of the day. And last but not least, it's very important that dopamine goes together with our serotonin balance. Okay, now dopamine, it's very important because dopamine works on motivation, but then serotonin works on contentment, on being happy. And these two need to be balanced. Or, as I say in my homeostasis book and in my Happy Brain, Happy Life book, it's got to be in equilibrium, right? Because they're not all both in exactly the same level, but they got to be equilibrated in a way that, you are feeling happy, right? Because that is what we want. A happy brain gives you a happy life. So the hack for this is going to be the following, okay? Avoid excessive dopamine chasing. Now, there's people that are always, people say adrenaline, and yes, you can spike adrenaline as well, but dopamine is the one that helps your frontal lobe work, right? Function, get excited, get focused. So if you're constantly chasing that dopamine, chase, what you're doing is really overworking and creating addiction to achievement. So you want to create that balance of feeling satisfied, feeling happy, feeling joy in things that are non-work related, and having that dopamine spike also in things that are non-work related, and create an equilibrium between both, right? Create that balance between both. Number two is practice daily gratitude, because gratitude boosts serotonin, preventing that dopamine burnout, right? So serotonin is going to be the spiking one that's going to make you feel happy about what you're doing, but not overly excited that you get stressed and burned out. Because excessive dopamine, excessive boosting of go, because people feel so proud that I'm a go-getter and I'm a workaholic. Well, workaholic is an overdosed dopamine person. And that does not make happy, because what happens is that you get burned out, and then serotonin stays really, really low. What it leads to is anxiety and depression. So we want to have an equilibrium between the both. And activities of gratitude are very important. In Spanish, I have a 28-day challenge called the 28-day gratitude challenge, and it teaches you how to balance this out with gratitude effects for daily activity. And last but not least is the morning sunlight. 10 minutes of morning sunlight increases dopamine and serotonin, and it just gives you a new fresh breath of air. So there's many takeaways from today's lesson. Number one is that dopamine drives motivation, learning, and productivity, right? But it must be managed wisely. Think about it, okay? Some of the hacks that we have talked about today has been the cold exposure, exercise, and what you are eating. Diet are going to enhance that natural dopamine production. Dopamine fasting and reward timing prevent the overstimulation and the burnout. And last but not least, balancing dopamine with serotonin ensures long term happiness and success. And that is why this show is called Happy Brain, so you can have a happy life, because the implementation of these techniques are certainly going to get you there. I hope you have enjoyed today's lesson. If you have, please comment, please make comments. Remember, there's always a link for our free guide to stress management and practical ideas and hacks for that, but also our link to our book, Happy Brain, Happy Life, so you can start learning and practicing all of these techniques for your own. See you in the next one.